You might not see anything wrong in this screen, neither do I at first glance, but deep down my heart is hurting. Being the Final Fantasy XIV boomer that I am, I come from an era where rDPS did not exist on FF logs. Back in Heavensward and Stormblood, we only cared about one metric, damage per second. But with Shadowbringers and mostly the addition of Dancer, rDPS became the go-to metric. In the following video, I'm gonna dig deeper into several things I believe are very important to understand DPS in Final Fantasy XIV. This will cover how stacking buffs works, why rDPS is not the best metric, and why taxing is not a thing. Let's go back to the machinist using Reassemble Prepull. If you look across the internet, you'll find several resources claiming that it is best to use Reassemble before you even pull. Even I claim it myself. Yet I wanted to dig deeper and see if it actually is better. The answer is sadly not that obvious. Back in Stormblood, no one would ever have thought about using a skill like Reassemble Prepull. This is due to the fact that FFLogs was based on what we call today ADPS. Missing out on buffs for big damage skills would lower your percentile and basically make you look worse. With the introduction of rDPS though, we've came across a more selfish mentality, especially for jobs that do not have any rate buffs. A general rule of thumb is that if you gain a usage of a cooldown, it is better to use it outside of buffs. In the example of Reassemble, we are talking about this 20-second delay to use it in the second drill that would hit all of the weight buffs, providing big fat damage. But why exactly does it do so much more damage? And this is where we have to look at rate buffs and see how they work. A lot of people think by default that rate buffs add up. This would lead you to believe that, for example, Trig Attack, which is a 5% vulnerability, paired with Devotion, which is also a 5% damage increase, would lead to a total of 10%. This is wrong. Buffs in Final Fantasy XIV are multiplicative. This means we'd have to start doing calculations. In our previous given example, we would multiply x with 1.05 times 1.05, in this case x being our potency of the skill we were talking about, which is 700 considering we are using the drill. The first things we need to note is that drill in a separate trig and devotion would end up every time being a total potency of 735. Since we talk about it twice, it would be a total of 1470. Now we're going to overlap both trig and devotion and use one drill inside of both and one outside. Then drill in both buffs will be 700 times 1.05 times 1.05, putting us at 771.75 potency. Obviously the drill outside of the buffs will remain at 700 potency. The end result here would be 1471.75 potency. Compared to our previous result, this is a gain of exactly 1.75 potency. You might say, but Fox, that's a minimal gain. Why would I bother playing into rate buffs? Obviously, for one single skill with two buffs that are only 5%, it doesn't make a big difference. The idea behind this example is to show you that stacking buffs is a gain over not stacking them. To make this difference more obvious, we're going to take a look at an example over a 7-minute fight as Machinist. To first understand how Reassemble affects using it in buffs, we need to understand how much potency Reassemble by itself is. This is done by using the multipliers from crit and direct hit stats that we gain by clicking Reassemble. With the current best in slot having around 3900 crit, we're looking at a damage multiplier of 1.617, which we're going to multiply with the flat direct hit damage increase of 1.25, putting us at 2.02 basically. Whenever we use a Reassemble, we multiply our base drill potency of 700 with 2.02, giving us a true potency of 1414.875. Next, we're going to add our rate buffs into the addition. In this composition, we're assuming that we have a Ninja, Summoner, and an Astro buffing our damage. So we have to account for all the buffs we get, which are Trig Attack, Devotion, Divination, and Cards. All of these together will give us a 1.262142 multiplier. Since it becomes a bit rough with all of the upcoming numbers, I will just show you this sheet I made. Feel free to pause the video to check everything closer if you feel like it. Basically, this sheet calculates different buffs and puts them onto the drill, while comparing a usage of 7 Reassemble drills inside of buffs versus 8 Reassemble drills outside of buffs. The result is that overall, Even while losing a reassemble, the total potency of our drill is higher because of the buffs provided by the party. So this would be a case of losing a usage being the better option. Yet, this is not always going to be the result. If we remove buffs, especially the Astro, we will see big change in numbers, favoring the Reassemble Prepull. Adding a Dragoon or a Scholar or even a Bard can also change the outcome in favor of Reassemble Prepull, as we are not benefiting from the provided crit or direct hit their buffs give us while we use Reassemble. But crit and direct hit buffs are a topic for a different video. The point I'm trying to bring across is that rate buffs are powerful and should be used to its full potential. Every time you press Reassemble Prepull, a ninja and a dancer are shedding some tear, because you are basically playing selfish outside of their buffs, hurting their ranking on FF logs. for watching the whole video. I hope you learned something today that might help you in your future Final Fantasy XIV career. I want to give a shout out specifically to Shalfu for helping me with the math I had to do. If you did enjoy the video, I would appreciate it if you stop by my stream or follow me on Twitter, whatever social media platform you use nowadays. I also want to point out that I do have a Patreon if you feel like supporting me. Until next time, cheers.